Hello everyone. This video will be about passing by reference versus passing by value in a function. So let's take a look. I set up a little demo. So we have increment by value and increment by reference. And if you take a look here, you can see one is just a normal int num, and one has this symbol here which represents a reference in C++. So what we're saying here is we're passing a reference here to this function, not by value, which would make a copy of that value. Okay. So down below we have an integer defined, and we're going to increment, and then we'll print out some information. Okay. And so what we're doing is we're passing this to the int, or excuse me, passing the int to this function, which is defined below. And as you can see, num1 is a copy here of the original. So this makes more sense with like a large object or something, but this is simple for demonstration purposes. So what we're doing is we'll increment with the plus plus here, and then we're going to print out that value. Okay, so we passed in this number, we're upping the value of the number by 1, and then we're going to print that out. Then when we get back here after execution, we're going to print that out again, and you'll see what that number is. Okay, and so we're going to start with a 7, and we'll execute that here. Again, I like to point this out if you're not familiar. We are compiling and using this to then execute upon successful compilation. So let's go ahead and execute. There we go. So in this increment by val, we're printing this message, right? From by val, so the by value, and the int value here is 8. Okay, so what we've done is we've called this function. The function's here, we're passing the number is then incremented, and then we're printing it out. And then after the execution, we're back here, and we're saying after by val, and we're now printing that value again. Okay, so like I mentioned, this is a copy. And so this copy holds the value of 8. But up above here, this is the original. So this original still maintains the value of 7. Alright, so let's go ahead and uncomment this, and then we will see a by reference example. Here we go. So you can see the original here. You have an 8 and then a 7. Now in this example, it maintains that 8 value, right? Because we're actually using a reference. So here, num1 is the actual value, or excuse me, not value, reference to the original variable here. So essentially, we're taking this variable and moving it to here, which would be incremented, right? In this case, with this one, we're saying here, copy this variable. So this is num1 copy, almost, you could think of it as, right? And so that means that only in the context of this, in the scope of this function, does this maintain the value of the increment, right? But here, whatever we've done will persist. So if we did this again, for example, we're incrementing again, and then we will print again, you'll see that the value again will be incremented, right? So 9. So that is 9 now persisting. So you can use it here. I mean, it's just somewhat recreating what we already have, but just to demonstrate. There we go. Now you see. So it is in fact 9 in this context. So what's the use of this? Well, sometimes you want a copy of a thing, and sometimes you want the original. Especially if you're, say, working with a large object, maybe the original is the thing you want to perform some operation upon, which would totally make sense. You'll see this, and passing by reference also avoids copying things. So in this case, an integer is a primitive, where if you had an object, you would be copying that object, and that's potentially expensive. It's slow in some cases, you know. So there are definitely uses for passing and operating upon things by reference. But you want to be careful, because if you are doing something by reference after this call, it will be a different thing depending on what your function does there. So keep that in mind. Very tricky. All right, well, that's all. It's kind of a short one. Just wanted to point that out. See you guys in the next one. Thanks for stopping by.